discussion. From the United Kingdom is Johnny Taro.
Hi, how do you do?
From Japan, Yukiko Yoshimura.
How do you do?
You said
Hi.
not hi. Yukiko had quite a time in her first host school. She was so shocked that all the American students spoke Japanese. They all said hi to her. And hi, of course, in Japanese means yes. From Lebanon is Ibrahim Huri.
Hello.
And from Indonesia, Sharmaini.
Hello.
Is that a first name or a last name?
First name, but in my country, last name is not important.
Oh, just one name, Sharmaini.
Just one.
Well, now, how are we going to start this discussion? Think nationalism, Ibrahim from the Lebanon, do you think nationalism is a constructive force in the world today?
Well, I would think nationalism is a good constructive force. It tends to be imperialism. Let me give you a small example who all of us know. Hitler himself. He tried to use the feeling of nationalism in his people. But in a way, he got mad maybe. And he misused the word nationalism. And he got his country into troubles. And this is what we don't like.
But Ibrahim,
yes, dear.
You as an Arab, perhaps I could ask this question. Many people in the West today regard Nasser almost as a second Hitler, but I know Nasser is perhaps your idol.
Oh,
What's
Nasser.
the difference?
Well, this is not a fair comparison between both. Hitler, as I said, misused the word nationalism and went into troubles with the other nations and brought destruction to his country, while Nasser is really using the word nationalism. And without the help of his people, who are really nationalists, he won't do anything.
But there's another question that amazes me. A few weeks ago, the United Arab Republic was formed.
Yeah.
You know, and afterwards there was a plebiscite. And I think the percentages of people who voted in favour of the Union, of the Nasser regime, was something like 99.99. Now,
Well,
these
that's
figures,
not true. It was 99.8.
99.8. But now these figures look almost like the figures of plebiscites in Nazi Germany or the votes in the Soviet Union a few days ago, more than the votes in a democratic country. Surely there should be more opposition than that.
Well, you can see by yourself that there are parties in Egypt, and there were a fair election for this opinion, and this was just by coincidence that he got this amount of percentage.
Do you really think that an absolutely fair plebiscite would produce those figures?
I would think so, and I'm sure of it. I'm sure that Nasser is an honest man, at least.
Possibly. But there's another question here that comes up. Nationalism as an aggressive force. Yukiko, many Americans, I've been with Yukiko, by the way, for the past 2 weeks in our host school in Pennsylvania, and many Americans were interested in Japan's participation in the Second World War. Why you tried to expand? Why was this, Yukiko?
Oh, well, that is a very important question. And in my country, as you know, we have important population problem. You should know we have half of a population, half of your country, and land is only like California state. So population problem is very important, and which we were looking for the land to stay with. And also in my country we don't have so much natural resource, so we hoped to get natural resource and something. Maybe this is one reason why we fight and something.
Can you trade only with another country, for example, without occupy another country in Asia?
Let me clarify your question, Sharmaini. You're saying, couldn't the Japanese have traded freely with other countries in Asia? Did they need to occupy them and conquer them in order to find? Is that your question?
It's my question.
Well, I think it is very difficult for me because I was so young then, so I don't know well about this.
Excuse me. I would like to know what Germany would say about nationalism itself. Especially Germany comes from Indonesia, a very good
Yes,
country
give us
now.
a little bit of background. Indonesia is certainly in the news today.
I think the resolution,
Revolution? Revolution?
Revolution in my country today is not to separate some part of Indonesia from another. It is just a political problem. You know, our government is centralism. So every region don't get enough authority to govern themselves. So they want to get more than authority than they have got. And they don't recognize the recent government, just like that.
Charmaine, I'm sorry, had you finished? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the question that appeals to me, coming from a country which is still perhaps in some ways a colonial power, is this. Should the Dutch have stayed on longer in your country, attempted to build it into more of a unity before they evacuated? I mean, we have the same question in Nigeria. For several years we've wanted to give Nigeria its independence. The people of Nigeria themselves are not ready for it. Their loyalties are still in many instances tribal, and they have been negotiating amongst themselves as to the form of government they want. We are only waiting until they themselves can decide what type of independence they wish for. Don't you think if the Dutch had stayed on, say, another 10 years in your country, they could have built more feeling of your being Indonesians and not Javans or Sumatrans?
Oh no, I think we are really to independence. It's really, we sometimes get difficulties in our development, but I think it is a habit for a new nation. You see, for example, United States. How many years the United States was in civil war?
Sharmani, don't you think that you got something from my country?
Oh yes, I want to ask you something about...
But just a minute, is the implication of your question, Yukiko, if I understand it, are you asking, would you have become a nation so quickly without the war and the Japanese invasion, if there'd been no Second World War? Is that the implication of your question, Yukiko?
Yes.
How about it, Sharmani?
Japan shouldn't come to Indonesia, you mean that?
Would you be an independent nation today, do you think, or was it the war that helped develop the spirit of nationalism?
I think the Second World War helped us to independence, but not particularly Japan.
Yeah, I would think war is a good help for you.
Yes.
Well, go ahead, you wanted to ask Yukiko something.
During the Second World War, Yukiko, Japanese occupied our country for about 3.5 years, and they killed many Indonesians too. And now, after the Second World War, and the victorious is not in your hand, and now I see Japan began to strong again. And what is the opinion of the new generation in Japan now? Are they want to occupy another country in Indonesia?
Oh, certainly not.
Indonesia.
I can say certainly not. In my country, as I said, we don't have so much natural resource, and we have many population problems. So we have to, and we should like to connect the Asian countries so friendly, and we should like to have trade and something like that.
But it is just same what they said when they first came to Indonesia. They said to Indonesian, "Oh, we are all acquaintance." But after that, they occupy Indonesia.
Well, I don't know in future, but right now we don't think such things.
Did the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki influence your nation's thinking very much?
Yes, I think so. This is a very point, I think. In my country, after the atomic bomb or after the World War II, we lost nationalism completely, and we recognize how important the peace is, and how we have to move to against the weapon and war and some sort of things. And so right now in my country, everybody hope to be peace, and everybody move to against the war and weapon and so.
Well, excuse me, going back to your point, John, you said that maybe if the Dutch stayed in Indonesia, they would help them. But let me tell you something, I don't think colonialism would help in any way. In the Middle East, we have the idea that the West looks to us not as human beings. They just look towards the Middle East as a petrol, as the Suez Canal, and as good place to get money from.
Yeah.
So, do you agree with this idea or not? I mean, I think it's now we are in an age that you must think we are human beings. We have to live, and you must give the freedom to all these nations.
I agree with you, and I think that both the United States and Great Britain have made some very grave mistakes in the Middle East. But there's one question that's involved here that I think is important. It's not easy for a nation to change from an empire into a commonwealth, as Britain is trying to do at the moment. It's a difficult problem. It's as difficult a problem as a new nation like Indonesia, adjusting to the fact that she is a new and independent nation. We in Great Britain are learning, A, that we are no longer the leading power in the West, that is the position of the United States today, and B, we are learning that we can no longer be an imperial power in the old sense. But it's a difficult thing to give up possessions which you've regarded as your own. And it does not come logically. But just look at the countries which, of our own free will, we have evacuated since the war. India, for example. Now, we could have stayed on and fought every inch of the way in India. Instead of that, we withdrew peaceably, and for that reason, we have close and friendly ties with India even today. Malaya, Ghana, there are many of these countries which we could continue with. But, as I said, it's not a logical process. I think myself that even the attack on Suez a year ago now was largely a psychological reaction inside my own country, the feeling that we are giving up so much we dare not give up any more.
Well, no, I don't agree with you. I think the British Empire, I may call it or not, they should give independence to all these countries because they have to recognize this hard feeling, this national feeling in all these countries. And the Suez Canal, which occurred on the Suez Canal, I would think this was not done by the people themselves. This was a political mistake. That's what I think. Do you agree with it yourself as a British boy?
I think it was a mistake myself, and I'm sorry for it.
Well,
Wait a minute, Yukiko, do you want to get in here? You're being much too polite.
No. Well,
Yeah, sure, go
Did
ahead.
you want to say something?
no.
I'm sorry, I can't tell whether you wanted to or whether you were just appreciating. Ibrahim, let me ask you something. When you said that nationalism is a good thing unless it results in imperialism,
yes.
I was waiting for John almost to say it is also a good thing unless it results in a little bit of too much violence.
Yes.
What is your feeling, John? What is your direct answer to this question? Is nationalism a good thing today, not yesterday, but today, or is it a danger?
I think it's a necessary and inevitable stage. I mean, we who have been independent, free nations for years can talk very loftily about nationalism meaning little. We know that all other people are as good as us. We might quite easily have been born Russians or Japanese, Lebanese, Indonesian. But it's a great deal harder for people who haven't got their independence yet. I mean, I'm quite certain I would feel far less objective about it were I a Muslim from North Africa, as Omar from Morocco was last week. I mean, we must recognize, I think, that at least the old-fashioned concept of imperialism is out of date, and it's harmful. Last week, I think, on the program, there was a lot of loose thinking from people such as Mogens from Denmark, who seemed to say idealistically to Omar from Morocco, to the North Africans, what do you want your independence for? Can't you all work constructively under France? Now, these are easy things to say, because Mogens comes from an independent European country. But I wonder what Mogens would be saying had he seen his country occupied for the past 40 or 50 years by the French.
Yeah, but now I'm wondering about something else. Have you retreated from your position that Nasser was like Hitler? First you said he was, and now you say that nationalism is a constructive force. Now let's get a balance here.
Thank you, Mr. Brother.
I was posing that because we hear this sort of loose talk so often in England and in the States that Nasser is Hitler, that people can produce all sorts of things, Jew baiting.
Well, so it is loose talk.
And I'm saying we hear it as loose talk, and I was interested to see the reaction of an Arab to that sort of talk.
But I'd like to know what you think.
Well, I don't know. Again, it's a question of legitimate aspirations and these flowery phrases. I mean, obviously the Arabs have a right to run their own country, their own area of the world. I mean, we can't help the fact that the petrol is in Arab areas any more than we can help the fact that we have coal mines in Great Britain. We can't help the fact that the Suez Canal runs through Egypt instead of running through Great Britain.
Well, Ibrahim, can you give us some help on the fact that Whereas we thought there was an Arab nationalism running right through all of the Arab states for a great Arab federation.
Yes.
Explain about the two new rival federations.
Well, let me tell you something first. According to what I believe is, nationalism in the Arab world has run all through the people, but the governments are still disagree. Let's take the Egyptian and Syrian Union and Yemen, for example. This union was done by the will of the people, and this will make it survive forever, because they are really trying to make something out of their nationalism. While those who are in Iraq and Jordan, the people there would like to join Syria and Egypt, and I'm quite sure their feeling of nationality will oblige them to join Egypt because it's a neutral country. But their governments, their kings there, do not like this. They just lean towards the West. They are mostly pro-Westerns. That's what I think. And let's have a look on King Saud, for example. He's a kind of a man who tries to keep the money for himself and keep his people uneducated. That's really what's happening in Saudi Arabia. And
Ibrahim, there's
yes.
a question that strikes me as important. I don't think you are pro-communist, are you?
No, I'm not.
No,
Sure
no,
do
fine. But look, when we look at the Middle East today, the only countries or the only regimes which are pro-Western are those which are vastly unpopular with their people. I mean, perhaps Jordan, Saudi Arabia, these countries. How can the West begin to win the sympathy of the Arab people?
Well, this is not up to me to decide. I don't know. I don't have quite a clear idea about this.
Sure,
but let me tell you something. The Americans are misusing their foreign aid. They are just giving money for the country. They are not giving, for example, industrial aid. They just give military and economical aid. This is very bad. I mean, let's face it. Every country today looks forward for an industrial aid so that in 10 or 15 years, they'll be an industrial nation. But America and the whole West would think that if they give them industry, what are they going to do with their own? That's
Yeah.
what they think. While Russia itself is trying to help Egypt and Syria and Yemen and all these countries, they are trying to give them industrial aid. And the relation between these two countries is completely commercial and economical. As some of the people, I think, would rather say that Egypt or Syria are communist countries or would turn to be communist satellites. But I disagree with this completely. Let me give you a small example about this. When the union between Syria and Egypt was organized, this was a long time ago, I guess, the leader of the Communist Party in Syria took his family and fled to Moscow. This is because he was certain and sure that President Nasser will persecute him as a leader of the Communist Party. Communism is illegal in these countries, and we as Muslims and as Arabs do not believe in communism at all. It contradicts the religion, and we'll never give up our independence. We got
Ibrahim,
it
I know
as
you and John
possible.
want to come back to this, but on the question of communism, could we hear just a word from both Yukiko and Sharmani about the state of communism in their countries? How is it in Japan today? Is the party growing or decreasing?
I think it's decreasing, but we know the dangerous communist party, so we don't like their communist party so much, and maybe I think this is decreasing. That's right.
But what about your trade with Red China?
Oh, this is an economic problem. I think this is not ideal problem.
I guess.
And in my country, we have so much economic problem, and as you know, we make many things, but we don't have natural resource. We need the market, and Red China, they have many people, and there are many land. There are many markets, and my country necessary to trade for Red China, I think.
One more question, sorry, John. Are your businessmen and traveling people going freely back and forth to Red China today?
Not so freely, but if some special some relation or something, maybe there are some people went to Red China, but not so freely.
Can we ask Jarmini now? Is that what you wanted to ask, John? I'm sorry. What about communism in Indonesia, and does it play any role in the current trouble?
Indonesia, we do have communism, but we can't prevent communism in Indonesia because we are democratic. We can prevent any ideology from our country. I don't think that we got trouble only from communism. the trouble in my country now it is not just from communism particularly. It is about regional, about self-government.
You don't think then that it is a real role, it's playing a real role in the trouble
No,
there
I
today?
don't think so.
I'm sorry, I come back to you.
Thank you. Well, I wanted to open up a rather new field of speculation.
Oh.
I've been wondering how much good these regional federations do. For example, a lot of people in Europe don't like the idea of the move towards the United States of Europe because, well, there are several main reasons. We feel we have our own culture that we want to maintain. We feel in Great Britain that we have one of the highest standards of living in Europe. Our working conditions are better than the rest of Europe. Our wages are better. We feel that if we become part of a federation, all these things will be pushed back down to the common level, things which we fought for a long time. And there are also many people who think that by uniting Western Europe, we are simply going to help build up the Cold War alignment. It's not going to be a federation of Europe, it's going to be a federation of Western Europe, and it's going to be more difficult than ever to break down the Iron Curtain across the middle of our continent.
Has anybody any ideas why federation in Europe has moved so much faster than federation in Asia? What is it? Is it the feeling against the Japanese, Sharmaini, that's still so strong? What's holding back work toward a federation in Asia? What would you say, Yukiko?
Well, I should like to ask Sharmaini, do you think that do you have a prejudice more? Do you have prejudice to Japanese or more than white people or something?
Oh, I don't have prejudices against white people or Japanese, only to imperialism.
But don't you think that the Dutch, the imperialists in your country, did any good at all?
I think no.
Did they build roads, schools, anything?
Yes, they did build school, hospitals, and something like that. But I think if the Dutch didn't come to Indonesia, we could also build a school, road.
You're bound to get an answer like that, John.
But the question
yes.
does arise. It's one thing that appeals to me sincerely. Why is it then that, at least in the present sort of stage of civilization, it is Europe, and, well, if you like, the United States as well as an offshoot of Europe, bringing civilization to other areas?
You know what the Africans say to on this point? Have you talked about it to them?
That they had a
They say
civilization.
history is going to say that Africa and Asia were far more civilized than the West because at least they didn't go out and fight for their rights.
Yes, that's true.
But on this point, one final question that I think Yukiko brought up when you say to Sharmaini, do you have more prejudice against the Japanese than you do against white people? This raises an interesting point, and I wish you'd give me a frank answer, you two Asian girls, to this question. I've heard it said in Asia that the fact that America dropped the atomic bomb on Japan and not on Germany still is thought of in Asia as meaning that we felt somehow far closer to the Germans than to the Asians. Is this a factor still?
Yes, I feel so a little.
Say a word more on that, will you, Yukiko? This is terribly important.
Oh, yes. Well, right now I don't think so, but maybe if 10 years ago, I think there is something, such prejudice or some feeling, because right now our country is so close by your country and so close by European country, but 10 years ago this is very different, I think. So.
What were you going to say, Sharmaini, on this? A frank answer to this question of prejudice.
Do you think Asian people in position is lower than Western people?
No, I was saying, is there this feeling in Asia by the fact that we dropped the bomb on Japan and not on Germany? But I think Yukiko's almost answered that question for us. You say maybe there was some feeling 10 years ago,
yes,
but not quite so much today.
No, I don't think.
I really wonder, though, would the West ever have dropped an atomic bomb on Germany or another European power? It's just a thought I throw out.
Excuse me,
Yes, Ibrahim.
John, I don't think it would do it. I don't think America would drop an atomic bomb on Germany. I don't know why. but this is just an inside feeling.
Yes, that's how I feel.
And let's go back for this union between our federation between
Sure.
the European countries. I would think I, as an Arab, will not trust you, will not trust this federation, and I have my reasons.
Yeah.
If we go back to history, for example, let's see, in the First World War, England.
In 2 minutes, Ibrahim.
Yeah. In the First World War, England asked the Arabs to fight beside her against the Turks, so that in return they'll give them their independence and they'll make the Arabs unite. But after they won the war, they just did not fulfill what they said.
Sorry, I hate to end on this
Oh,
note.
this isn't fair.
Half hour is up. Shall we use this as a first question next week on our final program?
Okay.
I'm sorry, that's all the time we have. If you do have comments or reactions, send them to the station you're listening, and if you have questions, we'll try to use them on the program next week. Next week, the final program in which all 34 of the delegates from 34 countries will be here in the studio together for a final get-together and goodbye before we all take off for a week in Berlin as guests of the ministry in West Berlin, and then from Berlin, everyone, sadly, will go to their homes. Until this time,